Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. We are doing the Red Team Threat Intel box. This is the next box in the Red Team Learning Path. Basically, this is going to kind of cover some of the stuff we've covered in the defensive path as well, but go a little bit more in depth in it and kind of let us start doing a little bit of our own research. So, before we get started, thank you guys so much for subbing. If you haven't subbed yet, go ahead and hit that sub button. It helps out way more than you guys know. Hit that like button. It helps out, again, way more than you know. The exclusive content on Patreon down below. Join the Discord, and also the YouTube members program gets the same exclusive content as the Patreon, except for the certification paths and the one-on-ones that you get with me. So do with that what you will. Thank you guys so much for the support. We're on our journey to 2K now, so that's pretty exciting. So let's go ahead and hop into it. So first things first, there's a couple things that you need to know. Verbiage wise, and that is TI is threat intel, and they refer to it from now on as that. Or you have CTI, which is cyber threat intelligence, and then TTPs, which we've covered a couple of times, is tactics, techniques, and procedures. Okay, so let's go to the next question. All right, so what is threat intelligence? So threat intelligence, pretty much, and that's, you see they refer to as CTI, which is cyber threat intelligence, boom, 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 is basically taking indicators of compromise or taking things we know about attackers and compiling it together and sharing that information. Now, you don't have to share the information, but it helps everybody to share it. So that's why ISACs are formed, which are Information Sharing Analysis Centers. These are companies that take everybody's CTI and compile it for people to use and to look if you think you have an attack or you think someone attacked you or whatever. You can look for those indicators of compromise and see, hey, this might be this APT based on, what they've done in the past. So that type of thing. All right, so and then APTs is advanced persistent threat. These are usually numbered and or named if you're certain organizations. And basically what these attackers are doing is much more in-depth attacks. They are looking for advanced persistence threats. So they are advanced, meaning they have the skill set. They're persistent, meaning they may be in your system for a very long time, and they're obviously a threat. So let's go ahead and look at them. So, excuse me, just about choked my own spit. All right, so as previously mentioned, the Red Team will leverage CTI, which is what we're talking about, leveraging it, using it for your benefit, to aid in adversary emulation. So if you're on a red team, you may go and simulate attacks. That's what red teamers do. So you may simulate an actual attack that an actual APT does to see if your company is ready for that attack or your customer is ready for that attack. So for instance, if you're simulating an insider threat attack, you may have someone on the inside helping you. If you're simulating a certain APT, you may go through the cyber kill chain and look at what they did and try to mimic that exact attack to see if you're vulnerable to it. All right. And you can see these are the frameworks that we're going to use to collect known TTPs or techniques, procedures, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. All right. So we have threat group, kill chain phase, tactic, objective, goal. So that's how they're categorizing the techniques, tasks, and procedures. Tactics, excuse me, I said tasks. I don't know why. Let's see, leveraging TTPs. Okay, so you guys can read that if you want. So this is actually just an interesting tidbit. This is the ECB Tiber EU. So the difference is this is the European, and you can see the European Central Bank. But this is their basically framework, same as our MITRE framework. Now, it's slight difference, but they all do the same thing. I'm not saying one's better than the other. They all do the same thing. The difference is this has testing in it, which is something that the MITRE framework doesn't have, I believe. So now let's look at TTP mapping. Okay, so tactics, techniques, procedures, mapping. What is that? You can see they're putting a visual to what the attackers are doing. So they're saying, okay, we start with recon, then we go to weaponization, then delivery, exploitation, installation, command control, action, objectives, blah, blah, blah. They're saying they're going to put a visualization to that. So that is where the MITRE Attack Navigator comes in. And we've used this before on our channel. The Attack Navigator allows us to actually go through and look at what different techniques that different groups are known to use for different parts of the kill chain and different parts of the mapping. So if you just want to know what kind of recon do they do. Like you think maybe they're not, in my network yet, but I think they're doing some recon on our network. Let's look for some of the different, some of the different things that might be reconning our network right now. So that is where the indicators of compromise might come in. All right, and you can see here they're giving you some information. They're saying going through the navigator layer, we can assign various TTPs we want to employ during the engagement below as a combined kill chain with the map TTPs. So here you can see they have the mapped ones here, and this is known for APT 39. So this is some of the stuff they're going to be doing. All right, let's go ahead and look. So, okay, we got some questions now. So MITRE ATT&CK will do most of the work needed, but you can also supplement that. So if you don't like MITRE ATT&CK framework, or you can't find everything you need in there, there's other frameworks such as the OST map, and it provides a visual map to link multiple threat actors and their TTP. So it'll actually show another different visual if you don't like the way that the MITRE ATT&CK, framework does it. So read the above and use MITRE ATT&CK Navigator to answer the questions for the Carbanak layer. Okay, perfect. So now let me find which one is the Carbanak that I have. Okay, so when you go to MITRE ATT&CK, here you go. This is Carbanak, okay? So this is the Carbanak. Now it gives you techniques used, software, blah, 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 blah. But you're going to go on the actual navigator and view if you want to see the process that they show. Now, what I mean by that is you can see that's what they're showing here. They're showing the same thing. Mine's in dark mode, whatever. You can do it however you want. So with that up, how many command and control techniques are employed by Carbanak? So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and you're going to go look for command and control. Okay, so you have command and control techniques. All right, so it looks like here they use legit programs. So they use remote access software and they use bidirectional communications. Okay, so that looks to me like that is 2, right? Whoops. So it looks like, yep, how many command and control techniques are employed? 2. So now it's going to ask us, okay, so we know that, what signed binary did Carbanak use for defense evasion? So now what we're going to do is we're going to look for defense evasion. Look at that. There's defense evasion. And we're going to look, what was the question again? What signed binary do they use? Now you notice only the blue ones are have notes on them, and that's because those are the ones that have been seen by them. Now you can see here, if you scroll down under defense evasion, Rundle32 installs VNC server software that executes through Rundle32. So that is a signed binary. That means it is a legitimate binary that is signed by the actual creators of it and proven, hey, this is exactly what it says it is. It is a legit program, right? When you download Microsoft tools and things like that, they are signed and verified by the publisher saying this is a Microsoft tool. So you know that you're getting what you actually think you're getting. Now, what they're doing here is they're using legitimate tools to do defense evasion. So now, what initial access technique is employed by Carbanak? So this is the initial access. So we go over and we look for initial access. Boom, initial access. And you can see they're using valid accounts. So what does that tell us? That means they somehow got our valid credentials and they're using them. So if for some reason, if I looked and I said, hey, I think this Carbanak might be in my system, how do they get initial access? I can say, okay, cool. They get initial access from valid accounts. So first things first, let's change all of our accounts, usernames, and passwords. And that will at least stop them from gaining more initial access, right? If they already haven't. Now, you can't just do that all the time just to be safe, because if you have 10,000 employees, that's going to be a nightmare, right? And then from there, you can say, okay, well, they also use Rundle32. Yep, there you go. You can see that they use it to avoid defensive evasion. So let's start looking at our logs and see, is that process being used and what for, right? And things like that. That's how you start looking and hunting these threats. All right, so let's go to the next one. All right, so let's close that one out. All right, so CTI, cyber threat intelligence, can also be used during engagements, execution, emulating the adversary's behaviors, techniques such as C2 traffic, blah, 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 malware, and tooling. So again, if you're red teaming, you may want to mimic these attacks because you want to see if this attack happens right now on my system, because these are known APTs, meaning they are known to attack. Let's say you work for a bank and they're known to attack banks. You may want to mimic this attack on your system to see, can I stop them, right? So that's what they're saying. They're talking about that. Different red team applications, how you're going to actually do it. Malleable profiles, which is just profiles that can change, be malleable, exactly like they say. And then you can see that you can mimic how an attacker, you can get really in detail with how the other attackers do this, basically signatures, if you will. Now, it's not an actual signature, but they are behavioral signatures. And you can see here, file signatures and indicators of compromise. And you're basically just going to, again, mimic these attacks. Now, I understand that this is different than a pen test, and I also understand that this, you might say, well, this doesn't help me that much because what if it's a 0-day attack? Well, if it's a 0-day attack, I don't care. Because why don't I care? Because if it's a true 0-day attack, my company can't do anything about it anyway, because it is a 0-day attack. It's never been seen before. They don't know how to stop it, right? Now, can you set yourself up to not be the low-hanging fruit? Absolutely, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about trying to avoid specific campaigns. All right, so creating a threat intel-driven campaign. So a threat intel-driven campaign will take all knowledge and topics previously covered, combine them to create a well-planned and researched campaign. So exactly what it sounds like. You're going to take everything we just learned, everything you're doing, and you're going to build out a researched and well-planned out campaign. So here they're saying, we have to actually view this. All right. So here they're saying the task flow in this room logically flows the same path you take as a red team. So again, this is how you're going to map out your campaign as a red team member, right? All right, cool. And then here's the actual cyber kill chain and MITRE attack. And it says here, launch the static site, which is here. Your team has already decided to use the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. Okay, so we're using the cyber kill chain. We're not using this. To emulate APT41. Okay, cool. So let's pull up APT41. All right, so here's APT41. And keep in mind, here is the Navigator version of it. All right, and we're going to start answering our questions. So if we're starting at recon, right, how are they doing recon? So let's look. All right, and you can see they don't actually have anything in recon, but that's fine. So we'll go ahead and I'll make that bigger for you guys, sorry. So we're looking at techniques used. Let's see. So they use malware. Let's see. All right. Perform password root attack. Leverage PowerShell to deploy malware families in victims' environments. Okay, so you can see one of the first things they did. So this one doesn't actually, I don't like this question because you can see if you look under recon, they don't actually have anything. But what you have to look at is one of the first things they did was use PowerShell. So that's what they're looking for. They're looking for just to follow the steps. Now, I understand that it doesn't explicitly say they use PowerShell for the recon, but it is one of the first steps they'd used. So therefore, it was most likely used for the recon phase, or they skipped the recon phase because they already had the information, okay? And when I say they skipped the recon phase because they already have the information, you got to understand that, like, for instance, one of the first, the last attack we just looked at was using valid credentials. Well, if you bought those valid credentials off the dark web, or they were a database breach or anything like that, you skipped the recon phase in a sense because you already have a way in. You didn't have to go search for that, right? So that's what they're talking about here. Okay, so now after PowerShell, you can see we go back here and we look at the Navigator. You can see the next step is weaponization. Okay, so how do we weaponize? What's our next thing? What are we going to weaponize? And you can see first thing that jumps out to me is spear phishing attachment, because that's obviously how we're going to weaponize it. That's how we're going to send our payload. So there's spear phishing attachment right there, right? So that makes sense to me. Now, the next one is delivery. So we have it weaponized. We have it sitting there. Now, how are we going to deliver it? Now, let's go ahead and look here and see how can we deliver this. Now, one thing I'll tell you is they'll save you a lot of time to look at this hint. You can see they put it in, they basically have them all arranged differently. Or actually, no, they don't. They have them literally in order. I didn't realize that. Okay, well, there you go. They have them in order. But that's embarrassing. All right. So what we're looking for is we're looking for the next step in the kill chain, which is delivery, I believe, right? Delivery. So what we need to find is under delivery. Let's see if we can find it here. And here's kind of what takes forever is you have to read all these basically. Like, you don't have to read all of them, but I'm saying I wish there was a way to like click on it and then it pulls up and you can leave it off to the side or something instead of actually doing it this way. But basically, if you're going off their hint, which you can see here, the hint, I didn't realize they were in order, so otherwise I wouldn't have told you to do that. But external remote services, which I don't know how you would have ever guessed that. That's why I don't like this question here, because you just would have, even looking at the looking here, external remote services is just such a broad answer that I don't ever see you just going and finding that yourself without guessing, right? You're just going to be looking at things and guessing, because there's a lot of things here that it could be, but external remote services is just a very, very, very specific thing to me. Or not specific answer for a broad question. Okay, we'll say that. So now then we're looking at, so that's delivery. Now we have exploitation. So we have it delivered to them. We weaponize the spearfishing attack or attachment. We've delivered it to them, right? So now what is going to exploit? And this is the bits job. And I guess it's just going to keep autofilling those for me, which is fine. So the bits job, and that actually you would find in here. You would be able to find that pretty easily. So if you go here, and you can see here, execution, bits job, and you can see right there. So that one would have been easy to find, but it's the one before that that I don't think you would have found easily. So now, then you have the installation. So now it's installed, right? Or no, installation's next, I'm sorry. So we have that. Now we need to go ahead and how are we going to command and control this, right? So how are we going to keep our data flowing and keep persistence, basically, right? And this is where DNS comes in. Now, if you're not familiar, they're using DNS traffic to hide what's happening, is what they're doing. It's not that they're specifically taking over DNS. Now, they might be. I didn't read it, but this is different. They're taking over DNS traffic to hide what they're doing. Now, again, I didn't read the APT. They could be actually just redirecting to their command control server. That's possible too. All right. And then the last one, actions on objectives or exfiltration. So how are they going to actually exfil and get actions on objectives, meaning get the results they need? And that's key logging. So they want to get data. They're going to key log, and that's how they're going to get their data. Perfect. So now, what web shell is APT41 known to use? Now this one's a little bit tricky because I didn't search every single thing here, but I didn't find it on here, but I did find it on here. So just kind of keep in mind, you might have to go back and forth, okay? So if we go down here, and you can look through here, it might be in here, but I just went straight to software because I know they just said it's a software that they're using, right? What web shell is APT41 using? And if you go here, ASPX SPY, server software web shell, right? So right there, that tells you pretty easily that's a web shell they're known to use. Now, what living off the land binaries and scripts tool does APT41 use? Now, you can just look through here and see the first one, certutil, right? Now, if you don't know what living off the land binary and scripts are, all it is things that are already installed on the system. Living off the land, right? It's like going out in the woods and you just hunt and kill what you can eat, right? It's like that. You take over a machine and you just use the tools on that machine to do things rather than adding tools, taking tools from other places and things like that. Why? It's less likely to be caught. Let's just say that. Okay. So now what tool does APT41 use to mine and monitor SMS traffic? And again, if you scroll down in software, you'll see it. And it is Message Tap. Now you don't even really have to think twice about it. Just the name alone gives it away. Message Tap. Boom. And now you can see, we'll go ahead and close that. Now you can see this is how, so we could follow that chain and see what is going on here and come to this conclusion ourselves. And then if we wanted to as a red teamer, we could perform this attack based on the information they gave to us. And then we could say, okay, we're vulnerable to it or we're not, right? Let's say everything, we're vulnerable to parts of it, but not to others. So we may need to change some things, right? So that's what the whole point of red teaming is it's to avoid APTs like this from just skating right into our network. It's so that we can simulate and hack into systems and follow their path and methodology to ensure that we are no longer vulnerable to that. And that may include letting them in, but seeing if we could detect it, right? It may say, hey, actually hack into this, but we detected it in 10 seconds. So we could have stopped it. We didn't because we wanted to see how far you could get, but we did detect it, right? Things like that. That's the stuff you're looking for. So keep that in mind when you're red teaming, that red teaming is slightly different than pen testing, but red teaming to me is more enjoyable. I like red teaming because I like the end, which is purple teaming, when you can talk to the actual blue team and see what they saw. You can tell them what you did, and you guys can get together, and you actually learn more that way, in my opinion. But that's it, guys. Hopefully you guys like this box. Hopefully you guys had fun, and hopefully you guys hit that sub button by now, because we are going to do this whole path, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it, and hopefully you guys have a great day.